Trombley.
Good morning. Welcome. It's Rochester today. It's Monday. I'm Andy Brownell on News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM. And it's my pleasure to welcome back to the microphones Olmsted County Sheriff Kevin Torgerson. Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning.
Good to talk with you again.
Yeah, it's always fun. I enjoy these visits. They're a good time.
So, we got a bunch of stuff I wanted to talk to you about, but one of them that really caught my eye is the sheriff's office is in the process of receiving and putting into service a whole bunch of new technology.
Yes. Yeah, it's a big change. It's not necessarily something that's going to be really obvious to the average person that sees our people and stuff, but it's a big change in our office for sure.
So I know part of it is new body cameras.
Right. So this is our third contract, I guess. So 8 years ago, we entered into our first contract with body cameras. We've had squad car cameras for decades now. That was something we got into not long after we started having assigned squad cars for everybody, and our just made sense to be going that route. Anyway, then about 8 years ago, the body cam thing started to get to be a big deal. 9 or 10 years ago, actually, and then we were able to get the county board to fund that to move to body cameras, and we had a company then. It was called Axon, AXON. They are the parent company of the Taser, which is obviously something also that our office has been involved with Tasers again for, several decades now. With, new generations, new technology and things, of course.
Everything gets fancier and better.
Yep. So we entered into a 3-year contract with Axon the first time around. And at the end of that 3-year contract, they realized they'd given us free storage. And apparently didn't realize how active our office is and how much we use it. And when the time came around to have a new contract, they said, "Well, wait a minute, you guys, you got to pay for the storage," and it was basically going to double, almost triple our cost. And it just wasn't something that we could do at that time. And so we did some shopping around. We came across another company called Utility. They had a body camera system that was basically a cell phone. And the real obvious and interesting piece of it is it just fit into a clip that was inside your shirt or your vest that our people wear. And there was this little fisheye camera or lens that sat up right in the middle of your shirt. And so we poked holes in all our shirts and put those little lenses on there. And so the last 5 years, we've been using Utility with great success. It's been a good company. They've been responsive to needs and changes and such. It was a lot of positives with it. It was the first time we were able to live stream with our deputies. It was a continuous upload, so we outfitted the squad cars with a Wi-Fi booster called a Rocket, and it would take the body camera. It would go from the body camera with the deputy outside the car, the deputy inside a house, with some limitations in that. It had a tracking mechanism in it too, so that we could follow our deputies if they did have a foot chase off into the woods or something like that.
Oh, wow, I didn't know you could do that.
And we were able to stream. I could, we had events going on, deputies doing various different things, and you could, to be out at a tense kind of standoff type deal, and you could, the command and administrative folks could either sit in a squad car slightly removed from the scene and make decisions separate from the actual tactical part of it as far as other additional resources and who else we should call and get support from. And then just monitor the scene and hear the conversations going on with our deputies and conversations with the individuals they are engaging with. So tremendous asset for us at that time. It was just a huge upgrade.
Think about when you started in law enforcement, and I mean, this is like operations room in the basement of the White House.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. And so it, we really enjoyed that part of it. And as we got near the end of this 5-year contract, we were looking at, again, doing what we should do as a government organization, see if we can find a company that's going to do or have a contract with someone that will have the right technology and the technology that gives us what we need at this point and what our community expects of us. And we came back to Axon. So Axon is now streaming where they weren't before. There's just a whole bunch of assets to it. So it's a kind of a big package deal. It's not just a body camera. Our squad car cameras will be updated and changed to the Axon, so they'll be streaming as well now. Every deputy will have a new taser, and this is both detention center and law enforcement, because our detention deputies have body cameras too, and that has been a tremendous asset, because the cameras that we have inside the facility don't have audio. And having the deputies in the detention center one-on-one with all the detainees 24/7, we never were capturing the conversations that were going on. And there was always, these little he said, she said things and stuff like that get to be really, a hassle and a problem, because, is that really what happened or what wasn't? Well, now we know exactly what's happening and what people are saying. And both are, and so if there's a complaint on a staff person, or, somebody's making threats or things are going on, staff assaults or different things that happen within the units, it's all recorded there. Not only do we have the Big Brother camera still up above without the audio, but now we have that detention deputy right there in the scene, in the moment. We can capture that conversation. And the other real huge asset to this is it's the same system that Rochester PD is using, so it really is going to make our county attorney and city attorney folks happy, because we're all on the same system and using the same evidence capturing system for all the video that is being asked out there. So we're still using the cloud and filling the cloud as much as possible, because we do so much of it, and our staff, especially our detention staff, every minute, every day they're inside the units, their cameras are on. So because they're engaging with detainees, so it's a lot to be thinking about, but incredible technology that's coming our way.
You mentioned the streaming. Obviously, you're expanding the use of streaming. Yeah. Are there any other upgrades that are?
Yeah, there's one other. There's a thing called automatic license plate readers. So ALPR, automatic license plate readers. And some people have had some concern over this, because what they do is they're little cameras that are fashioned to the squad, and they constantly are looking and reading license plates from anywhere. And when they get a car that has a revoked driver, canceled driver, a car that might have a warrant on it, or a child, what are they? My brain just went blank here. Amber Alert type things, those kind of situations, any kind of alert type stuff that might be associated with a vehicle, that will indicate to the officer, the deputy, and tell them immediately that car they just passed or drove by in the parking lot is a suspicious car for these reasons, and boom, it'll pop up on their screens. So we've had anywhere from 3 to 5 of those over the years, because they had been expensive. And of course, as technology increases, sometimes those prices do come down. Oh, yeah. And so in this entire package that is right around $3 million, thinking about it in that way, and then of course the maintenance that'll go on for the next 5 years.
And the storage of the data, right?
Yeah, and the storage, yeah. So with this whole package, with this company, we're getting the body cameras, we're getting the new version of Taser, which is going to be, again, just a tremendous tool for our deputies, just because of how it operates and works. And our people are out there in many cases, solo by themselves out on a traffic stop, 10 miles from any other, or 15, 20 miles from another deputy or an officer or trooper or somebody. So that Taser device is, again, a tremendous new upgrade that they've, worked out through technology. So it's the body cameras, the Tasers, the license plate readers, and the squad cameras, all four of those things, plus the streaming, plus the evidence capturing and gathering and sharing with other agencies. Another huge aspect of this is we can share much easier with the Minnesota BCA. So if we do have some form of a case, whatever it may be,
sure.
It's the BCA is also in on this system, so it's going to be a lot easier to share those really difficult cases that the BCA may be assisting in an investigation on with our technology. They'll be able to plug right in and use that as far as their investigation too. So again, I've been in this business now for over 4 decades, and it's just incredible.
You used to just have a two-way radio and a flashlight.
Yeah, and then the guys around here say, what kind of saddle did you have on your horse when you started and stuff like that. So, the technology has definitely increased over the years.
All right. Well, Kevin, we have to take a break. We'll be back in a moment with more with Sheriff Kevin Torgerson. It's Rochester Today on News Talk 1340, KROC AM at 96. We're back with Rochester Today with Olmsted County Sheriff Kevin Torgerson this morning. And, Sheriff, on your newsletter, you talked about a transition in personnel for what is called the township deputy, which I guess I was unfamiliar with that term, but it opens up a whole discussion about how the sheriff's office provides law enforcement to smaller communities in the county. And I know you contract out. I guess maybe you could give us an overview on how that all works. Yeah,
what does that all mean? I got to ask that question. I was at a Kiwanis Club earlier this week, and that was one of the questions is, why do you have to do that? And so I'll start from the beginning. So sheriffs are required by statute to provide primary law enforcement and first response to all unincorporated portions of the state. And obviously within each county, each sheriff is required within their county to do that, which means that if a certain area, jurisdiction, city, obviously in most cases, has a police department, then the sheriff is not the primary first responder. That police department is. But outside of that city, what we commonly know as townships within our counties, and they're unincorporated, then we are required to provide that first response for the primary one calls, the priority one, I guess is what we call them. So medicals, domestics, situations where things are in action right in the moment, and there's something happening right now, and somebody needs law enforcement immediately. So it could be a burglary in progress, could be some kind of an assault or, medical, whatever, car crashes, things like that. So we have to do that. Outside of that, though, if a township wants special attention because of a dog bite, or if a township wants special attention because of some ordinance issue, parking on a road that they don't want parking on, noise violations, barking dogs. It could be the neighbor playing music in their garage. They got a garage band and they're loud at night every night, or whatever it is. Those more ordinance type situations, or those lesser things where people aren't being harmed, we don't have to go there. And if we do, we don't have to go there in a hurry. And we'll get there when we get there. So when we do a contract with our small cities, like we do with Stewartville, Byron, Dover, Iota, and Orinoco, During that period of time, so there's two parts to this. It's can be a little complicated, but I'll try to lay it out. So like Stewartville has a 24/7, 365 contract. They ask us to be there all the time.
So you assign a deputy to the city?
A deputy every time they come in service. One deputy is down to Stewartville, and then we have a power shift contract where between generally the hours of 2 p.m., 2 a.m., there's a second deputy down there. And depending on shifts and what's going on, we might adjust that a little bit from noon to midnight or 1 to 1, whatever. That's very flexible, and that's why we like power shifts as an option. And that was something that gained a little bit of attention a few years ago because it was going to be an increase to their contract, and we were having a challenge of pulling our Byron car, who was supposed to be doing the same thing in Byron or out by Yoda and Dover, pulling them down to Stewartville because Stewartville needed more attention, and there was, the challenges with having a single lone deputy going to a domestic call or a suspicious vehicle call or whatever. We just can't do that anymore in this day and age in law enforcement and public safety with just one person. We got to have two people there, if not three or four, in these situations where it's pretty dicey. That was what got the attention with us in Stewartville was we came through a contract renewal and said, you guys got to help us out. We're pulling deputies from other contracts and shorting their contracts just to come down here and help and do what we need to do for you. So it's time you start paying for that. And so it came around and we worked it out. And so that's what they do. And then they answer every call that's going on. We'll run traffic in that city. We'll deal with parking cars and snowbird things through the wintertime, and that's what we do. And then so that's Stewartville 24/7. Byron and Orinoco, Dover, and Yoda don't have 24/7, but they expect us to be there a certain number of hours during the daytime and a certain number of hours in the nighttime. And generally it's more nighttime hours. The daytime hours is, for the most part, we tell our folks, be there during the school year before and after school starts, and then before school ends and school gets out, when there's a lot more moving around, kids driving and people moving in and out, and just gets to be a lot more traffic around those times. Those busy times of the day in those small towns can be, pretty active. So that's how they kind of balance that with the daytime. And then the night shift, they just, get there and stay there and, whatever number of hours there are. And then if there are other calls outside of those hours, so let's say a deputy's got there, I think it's 5 hours at night in Byron, for instance. Let's say they did that. They got there at 6 and by 11 o'clock they haven't left, and yet they've been answering calls and doing stuff in the city of Byron, and now it's 12:30 a.m., and there's a domestic or a fight at a local establishment or something, they're going to go, and they're going to go with other deputies, and we're going to bring more help in, and so they're going to get bonus hours, and they generally do get that over and above the contract. But then again, we're still responding because we're required to as the sheriff in those cities that don't have a regular police department. So that's kind of how that all works.
Wow.
And so several years ago, the townships around the city of Rochester, when we talk going to the townships part of it, the townships around Rochester were becoming more populated. Subdivisions were growing and things like that. And they then came to the sheriff at that time, and I think it was Sheriff Burkhardt, and said, hey, we want to see deputies doing some various things for us. And he said, if you can do that, you got to get a contract because that's the requirement.
It's beyond what the actual
it is what it is.
Says.
So what we have now is 3 of our 4 townships. So there's basically 4 townships that kind of ring the city of Rochester. Cascade Township is kind of west and north. And then Haverhill is north and east. Marion is east and south. And then Rochester Township is southwest and south. and they pretty much ring the whole city of Rochester. So Rochester Township, Cascade, and Haverhill then have entered into a contract where they have one deputy who does all of that stuff on a daily basis for those three townships, and that's all he or she does. And we generally rotate, an experienced deputy through those communities as they go through, and we rotate our people through generally about every 4 years. So, they're not stuck in that one position for a long time, and we like to have variety in our staff, having as many different experiences throughout their career as they possibly can. So, our deputy in there now, Corey Retzer, took over for Deputy Dean Thompson, and before that it was Tracy Pagel, and we just have a great group of deputies who have served in that role, not only in the townships, but each one of our cities, too. We have a contract like that. Well, I shouldn't say each one, but Eota, Stewartville, and Byron have a special extra contract where they do those daily tasks, then those more nuisance things like chicken ordinances, different little things like that they help the city with, and then on top of that, they're our main contact to the city itself on a daily basis. We also have sergeants that are every one of our 6 patrol sergeants has I think 3 townships that they are expected to have contact with on a regular basis. So go to their township meetings and just check in and how things going. And then if the township has questions, they can go right to that township sergeant first, and then or the patrol captain, or a lot of times they'll just call me up and say, "Hey, Kevin, we got a problem." So they all know how to get a hold of all of us. So that's kind of how our contracts work, and it's pretty much the same in most of the counties that have contracts with small cities that are within their communities. So,
well, I imagine we have to take a break for news already, but I imagine from the small communities point of view, you already have the administrative staff to deal with that part of it. And if they were to have their own police departments, they would have to create all of that on top of paying for the officer to be there.
And that's what we went through when we had that discussion and those kind of research that was going on with the city of Stewartville. That's what came out, because the contract only covers the deputy's wage, and we take the average salary of the deputy in our patrol division, which is our lowest salaried people in our office.
Sure.
It's not the detectives. It's not my salary. It's others, and that are those newer deputies that are working in our patrol division, because when you start in our office, you start in patrol. And so we take that average salary, and that's all they pay for. They don't pay for the benefits. They don't pay for the squad car costs. They don't pay for all the equipment that the deputy has. They're not paying for all the Axon stuff that we were just talking about earlier in the show. All that comes out of the actual, they're paying for it.
Right, the residents of the county.
People would say, we're paying for it anyway, Sheriff. What are you talking about? Yes, you are, but those cities aren't paying that extra fee on top of that they would have to pay if they had their own police department. And it basically would double their costs. For a city of Stewartville, it'd be probably over $2 million that they'd have to pay annually, when they're really only paying around $700,000 to $800,000. So,
but the benefit to the sheriff's office is you have additional personnel to use in case of the really bad things happening. Yeah,
it's a benefit to us as an office and the county in general, and then to them too in a great way. I remember a situation a few years ago where there was a drowning or a near drowning in a pond down in Stewartville. Tragic situation out of a daycare center. And we had, within a matter of minutes, I think we ended up, if I remember right, we had like 17 or 18 deputies down there trying to handle the whole thing, because we didn't know if it was criminal. We didn't know if there was something else involved, if there was a kidnapping, because the kid wasn't, nobody knew where the kid was initially.
Sure.
And then the child's father actually found him floating in the pond, and then, they saved the kid. So, tough situation, but that's the beauty of the way we can operate and support our small cities and small communities is, they pay for that one deputy to be there to handle those things initially, but we can flood the place with a whole bunch of other staff pretty quick. Partly because we are a large enough agency to be able to do that. Plus, just the technology and the assigned squad cars, and we can call people out from home to backfill, and there's just a lot of things that we can offer that really benefits. And it starts with those contracts. It really does. It's a good situation we have going here, I believe.
It's a lot more complex than most people would imagine.
Yeah, it's not that simple. Yeah.
All right. Sheriff Kevin Torgerson is with us. We'll take a quick break for news. Back in just a moment. Rochester Today. News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.
News app.
Good morning and welcome back. Rochester Today, News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9 FM. I'm Andy Brownell, and it's Monday morning with the Sheriff. Olmsted County Sheriff Kevin Torgerson with us this morning for our monthly visit. This is something that I've been wanting to ask you about. We've talked about this a few years back when Olmsted County got rid of their juvenile detention center.
Yeah.
But we're seeing this in the state of Minnesota, particularly in the Twin Cities, but I know it's been an issue here as well.
Right.
A real upswing in juvenile crime and offenses committed by, I guess what I would say, really young kids. I mean, we had this case in Minneapolis last week where you had 2 carloads, both stolen vehicles, 11 to 14-year-olds going around robbing people at gunpoint.
Yeah. And
what do you do with an 11-year-old felon?
Yeah. Well, there's certain things you can't do with them. And you have to give them back to parents and stuff in some of these situations. So it's not just a policing problem. This is a full-on cultural change that's not good in our society, and it's nationwide. Mostly, as you said, Andy, in the larger cities. So we're seeing it here. Our small communities, as we talked about earlier on, we're not dealing with that in our small cities. I know the city of Rochester and the police department have had a few incidences where they've got some very young children, I would say. I mean, they're really kids who have, for whatever reason, gone wild in a sense, and just thrown out any regard to safety, any regard to common decency or morals, and just everything that you hope a young child, can hang on to. And, one of the first questions I have is, where did they learn this, and how did they get so, mean and nasty so early on in their life? It's like,
kids,
how do you get there? I've asked that question about adults at times, but you see the press conferences that Chief O'Hara is having up in the cities almost on a weekly and sometimes daily basis, talking about these kids that are just running wild. And I don't know. It's a whole host of things. It's parenting. It's just so many different factors that are going into this. And many years ago, Andy, we were worried about kids and rock and roll music and stuff like that, and then it was punk
Elvis's
music.
hips.
And and then it was video games. You remember that era too, in the late 80s, early 90s, middle 90s, when video games were the cause of all ills, and so on and so forth. And now we have the internet, and there's so much technology that to hide who you are and to basically camouflage everything you're doing, and where adults are taking advantage of children, and other kids are taking advantage of other kids and making threats. And it gets to be this kind of steamroller, that snowball that's going downhill. It just grows and grows in size, and you can't stop it. But we've got to find a way. We really do. I attended last week Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenges Gala, and it's just such an incredibly uplifting event. And they've got such a great partnership. I didn't know they were working so close together until I was at the gala, and I was talking to different people with Teen Challenge, and then also the director, Allie, out there at the Jeremiah program. And I didn't know they had such a connection with Jeremiah program and Teen Challenge, where they have a Jeremiah program. It's a great program where single mothers get a chance to live in a safe place with their kids. And requirements are you got to, maintain order, and you got to go to school, and you got to be getting a job and doing all the right things and stay sober. And what a tremendous effort that is. But basically what they're doing, and it was said by one of the speakers that night, where not only are they fixing that current generation, that individual who's been through a horrendous road of addiction, but now they're saving that generation. Then they're saving that child, and that child then will hopefully grow into being somebody who's productive and law-abiding, and then passing that on to their next generation. So it's a slow process to turn this thing around. But as your question, Andy, what's going on? I don't know what's going on. It's a tough one, and it's going to take, in the words of Nancy Reagan, it takes a whole village to raise a child, and that's what we've got to do. You can't turn your eye to things that are going on in your community. You've got to call it in, see something, say something is as strong as ever now. And parents who are struggling with their kids, they need to get help. They need to ask for help, and there's a lot of folks in the community, certainly your law enforcement agencies, that are willing to help, social services, child protection services, just a whole host of folks that have the resources, for the most part, to do things. But on the other end, what do you do with the kids that are so violent and there's no place to put them?
Yeah. I can't imagine being, the officer, the prosecutor, or the judge in this situation.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing right now that everybody in the criminal justice system is struggling with and it doesn't matter if it's a small community or a large, metropolitan area like cities. We're all facing that challenge right now because the violence has gotten to be at such a young age. And, we have laws that say, well, a child under this age can't commit a crime. Well, really? We used to think that 15 and 16-year-olds didn't know what they're doing and that they couldn't be charged. And, we have our own history here in this county where, that had to be debated hotly in court and so on. And now we're talking 10 and 11-year-olds. Man.
It's unimaginable. It really is.
It really is. We do DARE in our small schools and do the DARE program there, and those kids are fifth graders for the most part, 10 and 11. If it's sixth grade, it's 11 and 12 years old. And yet to see those kids and think that, mile and a half or an hour and a half up the road, there's 10 and 11-year-old kids holding guns, driving cars, and, acting as if it's, just a free-for-all. I just don't, I don't have words. I can't figure out how they get there. But we've got to find a way. I know they're struggling big time in the cities. Unfortunately here, the Rochester Police Department is doing a lot of really good engagement stuff and working in the schools with the school district. And, we don't have all the answers. I'm sorry. I wish we could, but I guess got to keep working.
On the more immediate part of it, is there any discussion within the law enforcement community, the correctional community, and the judicial system about, creating some sort of system for housing these children who are out of control? Because we, members of the public, need to be protected from them.
Well, you want to be safe. Yeah, exactly. You don't want to be walking out of the grocery store or the Quick Trip and have a gun pointed at you by 11-year-olds because they want your car and your groceries. That's not the society we want to live in. I don't think anybody does. I don't care where you're from. And your question, we talk about it a lot. And it's something that we're struggling with in a big way here. You mentioned the juvenile detention center here closed a few years ago, and we take our more challenging and difficult kids up to Anoka for the most part, because that's the the largest facility, and we, as Olmsted County, we pay for space up there on a daily basis so that we have availability there, and that's been working. The only challenge is it's 2-hour one-way drive to get them up there, and whichever agency here, us or Rochester PD, whoever makes that arrest has to do that initial transport. And
but they're not even going to take an 11-year-old, right?
I don't think so. No, I not right off the top of my head. I don't believe they are taking 11-year-olds, and that's the challenge is where do you go from this stuff? And so there's a deeper problem in it, and that is, I kind of touched on it, is these kids are doing. There's a reason they're doing it, and it's coming from whatever pain or challenge they're already having. Maybe they've been abused or mistreated, or things obviously aren't supportive and stable at home. So how can you return them home? But then again, as you said, where do we put them? Is there foster care that's going to be able to handle that? I don't know. You don't fix that stuff overnight.
One heck of a foster family if they could handle that.
No kidding. Yeah. It's, my own family, my brother, who passed away several years ago, he fostered a newborn, young kid, who had been born into a addiction situation with his mom and his dad, and they took him away. He had been abused, and it was a tough situation. And then about a year later, his little brother was born, and they took him away right away when he was born. So he never really had the experiences that his older brother had. And eventually, my brother adopted him, and then my brother passed away, and his wife raised those two fellas, and they both graduated from high school now, and they're both in construction and just fantastic kids. So there's no question in my mind, just from our own family experience, that the environment these kids are in is the problem, is part of the problem. And so we have to find a way to remove them from that. There's no question in my mind, but how do you do that with a kid that is so violent already at such a young age? And that's the trick. And, it's not something that we law enforcement have control over.
No.
It's our social services, it's our probation, corrections department, it's our courts, our judges, and everybody else.
Well, you point that out with your late brother to be that adult role model for even a neighborhood kid. If you see a neighborhood kid who's living in a difficult situation, be that adult that kid could come to. Yeah, I heard a nice little PSA this morning, or maybe it was yesterday. I think it was this morning, getting in the car, and it was a PSA that talks about being a good sport at sporting events and being a good parent, that celebrate my it was the child talking. Yeah. And the child says, celebrate my successes by me trying, not that I won the game or I made a bad kick in soccer or struck out or whatever. Celebrate that I'm trying. Celebrate that I'm participating in something. It's not always about the win. It's about the participation. And so many of these kids, even at that young age, just don't have that reinforcement and positivity in their lives. And, that's a big factor in it. But, it starts with so many different things. It's mental health again. It's drugs. It's just so many, these hurdles that are put in our way that we just have to keep doing the best. So support the kids in your neighborhood, support the kids in your schools, and do the best you can. But when they're stepping on the line, if you don't feel you can do it yourself, you call us. We talk about it a lot with our people that, look beyond the kid. Don't just deal with the kid itself, but ask more questions, and maybe there's some help we can offer the child through, other resources that we might be able to find through our connections. So, I wish I had good answers for you, Andy, but it's something we all have to step into. And unfortunately, we still live in what I consider a big, small town.
Yeah.
And in Minneapolis, St. Paul metropolitan area, that's not the case.
Yeah, we're very blessed to be removed by that hour and a half drive. And not to say that we don't have the challenges, because I know they are, and I know our schools are keeping the lid on and doing a really good job in our schools to try to get these kids to go follow the right path, and that education is the key to everything. So there's a lot of good people out there doing incredible work on a daily basis that never get the credit. We just have to keep trying, keep doing the best we can. And when it's out of line, it's out of line. And you got to make it known.
All right, Kevin. I wish we had more time. We'll have to
I know. Me
talk
too.
more in a few more weeks. I look forward to
Andy.
it, as always. I know you have a very busy schedule, so
I do.
I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to share with our audience. And Sheriff Kevin Torgerson this morning. It's Rochester Today, News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.